To get started, it is important to learn how to work with the Houdini workspace and the panes you will use on a regular basis. Learning how to work back and forth between these interface elements will be an important skill moving forward. To start, we open up a fresh Houdini, and we're going to go File, New Project. This brings up a pane here, and we're going to call this Overview Lesson. Press Enter and Accept. We're then going to go File, Save As, and this is now pointing into that directory, and we're going to call this Gumballs 01, and that gives us our starting point. So here we are in the workspace where you can see the key elements, the scene view where you'll do your 3D work, the parameter pane which has the properties of each of the elements that you work with, and the node view where you'll actually work with networks and nodes. At the bottom you have your timeline, and at the top you have toolbars, which sometimes you'll use to access tool, although we're going to get started a slightly different way. So here in the scene view, what we can do is we can press C. This gives us a radial menu, which gives us a whole bunch of different options. Let's go in and go Create Geometry, and we're going to go Tube. And when we finish, it's going to allow us to place it by hand or simply press Enter to place it at the origin. Now, up at the top is the operation control bar, and it gives us access to some parameters that we can play with. So for instance, we can change the radius at the top to 0.7. We can change the height to 1.5. And the rows and columns, we're going to go 6, and we'll leave set the columns to 14. Now, you can't really see the benefit of that right now. We need to go to Smooth Wired Shaded, and that will show you that topology. But we'll leave that off for now because we'll see that topology later. Now, once we have this, you'll see that these parameters up here are actually not on the parameter pane over here. What they actually are is if I double click to go into there, those parameters exist on a geometry node down below. But when you're at the object level up here, some of those parameters get promoted up and you can make those changes right here. So usually it's only from the very last node at the geometry level. Now before we start going any further with this, let's look at your view tools. So if we click on this camera or we press the escape key to go there, we can left click to tumble, middle click to track, and dolly in and out with the right mouse button. Now, a lot of cases you're not in the view tool. You might be in, for instance, the select tool. So in that case, you have to press either the space bar to then evoke space, left, middle, and right, or you can press the Alt key, which also gives you access to this. So when you're in another tool, like a move tool or the handle tool or whatever, then you need either the space bar or the Alt key to make that work. Now, if you want to do see everything, you can go spacebar H to see that. If you have this grid active, spacebar H will actually take you to the whole grid. And then if you go spacebar G, it will zoom in on that object. What you can see there. So those are some of the view tools. We'll use those as we go along, and you'll get comfortable with them from there. Now if we go into this view, we can also press spacebar B, and that moves us to a 4-view system where we can actually see a perspective view and then a top, front, and right view. And you can change views in these, or if you click on this little button up here, you can link the ortho views so these all function together. So that's a useful tool right there. So let's press the S key, which gets the select tool. And what we want to do is double click on the tube to select the whole thing. Now we're at the object level, so if we press 4, this will bring us down to the geometry level. So this, you've got a series of options here. So the hotkeys go points, edges, primitives, 2, 3, 4. And if you press 1, it'll go back to the object level. 2 will give you points. 3 will give you edges, and 4 will give you primitives, which some people call faces, but in Houdini they're called primitives. Double click, and there we go. And we can also, if we press the V key, we can look at shading, and like we said before, smooth wired shading would allow us to do that. But when we do it there, it seems to only work in the one view. If we do it here and go smooth wired shading, we'll get it in all 4. So when you're at the geometry level, you'll notice it says geometry here. If we click at the object level and go up, it says objects there. And it helps to understand where you are as you're working with objects. Generally, objects deal with the transformation of things, the positioning of it. If you double click in, now you're dealing more with the shape of something, and have tools appropriate to that. So now that we've selected this object, we're going to use another way of getting tools. So we're going to press the Tab key, and we're going to start typing out match. And what we're looking for is something called match size. So this is another way of accessing tools, and that puts down this node right here. And then we can set justify to min. So we're taking the min of the object and we're moving it up. And that you can see how that we're now at the ground level with that here. And that's a useful tool to just position things, so that even if we made the tube, let's say 3 really tall, at the match size level, you'll see that that really tall thing is still on the ground. So anyway, that's just let's change that back to 1.5. That's what the match size does. Now you'll notice that as I click here, I get an outline of what it looked like before it was matched. And this means that while you select whatever's highlighted in yellow, you're actually working with. So it's very important, if I want to work with this going forward, I have that selected. So anyway, we'll probably deal with that a little bit later. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press 3 to go to edge selection. We're going to go into here and double click to get that area around there. Now instead of using tools we have, let's click on the polygonal shelf, and somewhere along here we'll find polyfill, and that fills that void. And then we're going to change that to quadrilateral grid, which gives us a good look there. But what we want to do is we want the offset to go to, let's see, 5, no, let's go to -5. And that aligns it nicely with the axis here. So that's good there. And you'll notice down here, there's a little bit of a bump going on. We're going to change the tangent strength to 0 to flatten that out. So that just gives us an option there. And we can go spacebar H to get that. So the next thing what we want to do is we want to get point selection. We're going to press 2 to get point selection. And we are going to grab these points here. And then we're going to go Tab, Soft, Transform. And what that's going to allow us to do is begin to shape the individual points and reshape this. So if we go E to get scaling, we can scale that out. Now that scales in all directions. Let's undo that. Let's actually click on this here, and this will allow us to scale just in those 2 directions. Now once you've got that, we've got this radius here that we can then drag out to get a nice fall off from that transformation. So this is a nice sort of feature to get a nice smooth transition as we scale those points out. So let's go back to the select tool. Let's press 4 to get face selection, and let's just go into here and go spacebar. Well, no, let's spacebar H to sort of zoom in on that. Make sure we see all that. And we're going to double click on this. And now we're going to go C, Model, Polygons, Polyextrude. Now once we've got that, we're going to push this into about minus 0.1. And we're not getting both sides. So by default, we generally ignore the back, but this time we need the back, so we're going to get that. Now the shape we have here is it's sort of a bluish color. We don't want that, so we're going to go tab. We're going to go tab, reverse, and that will flip it. That flips the normals to get us what we want there. Now, once we've got this shape, what we want to do is we want to add a handle. So let's go spacebar B to bring this up. And what we can do is we want to connect this face to this face with a bridge. So we're going to go with the select tool, S, and we're going to select that. We're then going to go polybridge. It's going to ask for a second selection. We're going to select there and press enter. Now, results aren't perfect quite yet, but what we're going to do is set some settings in here that will make that work. So we're going to put about 10 divisions in. We're going to set this up to curved, and we're going to do a pairing shift of 1. And if we tumble around, you'll see it's doing it. It's just going in the wrong direction. We'll fix that in a second. Now, in the footing section of here, we've got our source and destination. And so what we want to do is we want to change this to along. And we want to do the same thing along there. And then we want to change this one to explicit direction and this one to explicit direction. And what that allows us is gives us a nice handle where we can pull out and pull off here to get a nice little cup handle. And then you can even, if you want to say, okay, I want to go up a little bit with that, or I want to go down or up like that, you can control it there. So you've got a fair bit of control of the various pieces there. The next thing we can do is we can work on the bridge itself. And we're going to set the thickness to 0.66. And that will just create it a little skinnier than where we originally started. We're also going to click in here and just pull that in to sort of thin things out as we go a little longer along the handle. So that gives us a nice feeling right there. Now, what's important to understand with Houdini is that everything we've done so far has added a node into this geometry network here. Match size, polyfill, transform, extrude, and so on. And that will allow us to go back and make changes, which you're going to see a little bit later. Now we're going to press S. We're going to double click on this, go tab, subdivide, and we'll get a little bit of a subdivision on that. Get the S key, double click, and we're going to go tab, color. Now every time we do something in here, it adds a node in here. We can then go click on this and say, okay, we want that to be sort of an orangey color there. Now if we go back to here, we can go smooth shaded, and we can see that. We see that it's not perfectly smooth here. It's a little kinky in some places. Now one way that we can deal with that is we can go Shift plus will turn on proper subdivision. So it's taking the polygonal model we had and subdividing it as it would at render time. If you go back, so let's say we go back here and we go smooth wired shaded, you'll see the cage sitting around the polygonal geometry that's inside it. So there we go. You've had your first taste of Houdini. You've built something up from scratch. You've used various geometry nodes to define that shape. And what we can do is, let's go to the object level. Let's call this cup. And if you go to the render tab, you'll actually see that the subdivisions was actually, we turned this on right here. So if you go full geometry, you don't see it. If you do this, it does. If you want to render this later on, you've got to check that box there. Otherwise, it won't render properly. And there we go.